Welcome to our day on talking about costume. We're continuing with our discussions, and right now we're going to be talking about costume agency research project. So without further ado, I want to invite here Kristina Lindgren, Sonja Lotker, and Charlotte Ostengard. Please join me in welcoming them.
So hello, is this working? It's working. Hello, I'm Sonja Lotker. I'm a dramaturg and curator. I used to be artistic director of the Quadrennial, but now I teach at DAMU in Prague. And this is Kristina Lindgren.
Hello. I'm a costume designer, scenographer, sometimes also do directing, working as a professor in costume design in Oslo.
Okay, I'm Charlotte Østergaard. I'm a costume designer, and I'm doing a PhD, artistic research PhD in Sweden, in Malmö.
And today we're going to talk about Costume Agency, which is a project me and Kristina did since 2018. It's a long-term artistic research project. And it's a project, I think, as you will see as we talk, that is done by practitioners. So it's real artistic research. And it's done, I think it's very important to understand that I think as a dramaturg and a curator, and that Kristina thinks as a costume designer and a director. And what we did was, over the course of 4 years, we did a series of workshops that were exploring how costume functions in a performance, what it does, how it performs. Because I think traditionally we think, or we used to think that costume is mainly there to support the character of the play. So it depicts, you know, identity, a specific era, gender, social status, and so on. And in the last, I don't know, I cannot even really say how long, but at least maybe 50 years to 100 years, that has changed. And the costume does not only support a specific identity. So we wanted to make this project in which we looked into different ways that costume performs and what it does.
Yeah, and I should also use the occasion now to say that Saladin, which many of you know, she's a very crucial part of the project. She could unfortunately not be here today. But the pictures you saw just now, and also the pictures here, is from her, one of her two main parts of her research. So her research is connected to costume agency, and it is an in-depth research that she does over 3 years. Also artistic research. So here is an image from her performance called Give Them Wings, and we shall see their faces. And which is a multi-sensory experience. People are guided through the installation, blindfolded, and it's using the sense of touch, the sound, the smells, where they have an experience of costume.
And maybe to say why we're talking about Sally is because the whole project was done in such a way that we didn't do it just two of us, but we did it with many, many, many costume designers. Some of them you are here with us now. I think it's about 25 to 30 costume designers that work with us within these workshops where we provided performers and lighting designers and sound and documentation and so on. And we followed and interviewed the costume designers and work with them. So Sally Dean was one of the main people who was with us in multiple workshops, and she did her PhD with us.
And before we go further on, I should say that the project is affiliated with in Oslo National Academy of the Arts, and where costume design is a part of the design department, together with fashion design. And we also got support by the Norwegian Artistic Research Fund funding. And we also had the partners, Soja from Damu, here in Prague, and also Sofia Pantovaki, who is also here, I think, today. Yeah! Who also hosted one of the workshops, so also a crucial partner to the project. Okay, so we should say something about the background of the project. You have already started, Soja, but we say something like, one of the things is approximately 20 years of costume design as first research field, not subordinary to the field of fashion or scenography. And we have had the critical costume, the crucial critical costume conference and exhibition that you heard about earlier today. And then it's the publication studies in costume and performance, where we also have the journals, and then also many major books, publications. We have also, I must say that there's many ways to frame it, but one of the important frame is also, I mean, this research takes part in, together with dancers, and the dance context, or also like the post-dramatic theater, you could say, is maybe also one of the premise for this opening up of the field and making it also possible for this non-traditional way of exploring performance. So you could say post-dramatic theaters, when text is not longer the main deliverer or premise for a performance. The theories of Hans Thies Lehmann has opened up new approaches to performance, and thereby also we ask, if text is not the main deliverer or the first starting point, where could a performance start? Could it start in an untraditional starting point, like costume? So that was a long way to say something we all maybe know.
But it's quite hard for us because we worked on this for 4 years, so we're a bit hectic. We're trying to say everything in 20 minutes, so forgive us if it's a bit messy.
Okay. Yeah, and within this we also have the costume designer's role is revised. We're no longer just providers of garments. And also a current debate on ethical questions related to the identity in performative settings. And also the timing is good because the theories of new materialism, acknowledging both the human and non-human actors as interconnected, the garment and the performer. Yeah, so that's something about the background. Yeah, here we have another image from a designer that is has contributed to us, that is Charlotte sitting next to us, participating in workshop number 7.
But I think it's important to say that for us it was important to provide time and space for costume designers to think and to develop their own work and to give them dramaturgical support, documentation support, and so on.
And important was to describe, or for us to research, what does costume do? And not, because costume things do things, so it's understanding how it unfolds. Another designer, Signe Becker, and this was her participation in workshop number 3 was further developed to a full evening performance, and actually that was the opening of the Critical Costume 2020. So the whole performance is to be seen on our webpage, or Critical Costume. So. Oh, sorry. Another designer, Fausto Viana, took part also in workshop number 3. Yeah, so the main research formats, do you want to say something about that, Sonia?
Well, the research format was, the main one was costume designers would have 2 weeks to develop the work that they already started into a performance, and we would provide performers and lighting designers and all the support we can. It was never, I mean, within, of course, 2 weeks, you could never really make a full-on performance, but I think it was start of many performances and a start for costume designers to emancipate themselves as, you know, as the main creator, I would say. And I mean, you'll see in the photos, of course, different costumes. We started off by thinking we will figure out how costume performs, but of course, each project works completely different. This one, for instance, really worked as a tool of memory and political installation and so on. Charlotte's work works more as a materiality that connects living bodies in real time. So I think what we found out was more that there's like endless possibilities of how costume performs.
And in addition to, we were hosting also critical costume in 2020 that were talked about earlier today. And that was, we invited through the open call to have the theme costume agency to also further develop the theme for our part. So it has also been a mutual enrichment for the research program. Yeah, here's the work of Linnea Bogander, Vidmina Stasiulit. Okay, the workshop number 1. Okay, when we started the project, we wanted first to see what are our tools to doing this artistic research on costume design. So we wanted to make it more like a test of how we can research that. So we made a film that that is free to be viewed on our webpage, Costume Agency at KIU.no. You can see it on the line here. It's actually a film where we play one scene of Hedda Gabler 6 times. The actors are instructed to play as the same way as possible each time. It's the same apartment, and they're doing the same scene. And they're really trained like Stanislavski method acting. Yeah. So they're and the only thing that changes is the costume of Hedda Gabler. And after each scene is taken, then the performers discuss the impact of the costume. So we have a 1-minute trailer. So if you can have the video, please.
Endelig en gang en dåd.
Gud bevare meg, Hedda. Hva er det du sier her?
Jeg sier at dette er det skjønnhet i.
Hedda, hvordan kan du snakke?
Skjønnhet? Nei, tenk da.
Hvordan kan du snakke om skjønnhet i det her?
Eilert Løvberg har gjort opp regningen med seg selv, og han har hatt kraft og mot til å gjøre det som skulle gjøres.
Nei, det han har gjort i villelse.
I fortvilelse har han gjort det.
Nei, det har han ikke, det er jeg sikker på.
Jo, det har han. Akkurat som da han rev tekstene våre i stykker.
Han døde.
I brystet.
Nei. Det traff ham i underlivet.
Det latterlige. Det lave. Det bare legger seg som en forbannelse over alt jeg rører ved. Æsj!
Could I say something?
Yeah.
I think it's important to know when we were shooting, the other actors did not see the costume until Hedda walked on stage. So we were recording as they were adapting to the new situation. And I often think that I learned more about acting than about costume design, because you could see actors adjust and you could see them, trace in their memory and try to reference it and try to adjust. And there's something, it was very powerful for me to understand that, often people say that actors work with fantasy, but here you could see that they're working from reality and dialogue with the reality, and that they're fishing from the moment, but also memory and adapting to that. And another thing was when we started working with the actors, they were really, really worried that they will have nothing to say to us about costumes.
Yeah, they said, oh, you've chosen the most dramatic scene of Hedda Gabler. No one will look at the costumes. But, but yeah, and then after when they say, oh, with this costume I couldn't perform the role as I planned, or oh, the costume had such a domino effect because she changed and then the husband changed. So who am I when I'm married to my wife and she just told me about this man that she's contributed to his suicide, and there she's in this Mickey Mouse pyjama, and who am I to be married to this woman? So it was like. Yeah, they really change a lot. Yeah, so the film is like 1 hour and 15 minutes. It's free. It's on our webpage. So use it. I used it a lot in teaching. It's very useful. So please. Okay, we have to move on. So here's the next workshop was a workshop on devising.
Yeah. So maybe I say something. So the second workshop, that was kind of a mapping workshop for us, was we worked with the different device theater strategies in relationship to costume, and it's because I teach at DAMO at the alternative and puppet theater department, and puppeteers come from the tradition of dialogue with the material. When you're carving wood, you have to know where the lines are so it doesn't break. So we do a lot of teaching based on this dialogue with materiality and reality as it is. And for this workshop, we worked with it. Device theater always looks like hell, but it actually is quite nice to experience. So the photos are not so pretty. But it was quite beautiful to work with, and we didn't work so much with costume design. We really worked with garment and worked with garment as an object, and as an object that you can have dialogue with and that you can translate into different forms and formats. And I think it gave us a lot of understanding what this thing in relationship to body does.
Then we're actually going to the main format of the research, and that is that this, as Soja already mentioned, a workshop through an open call. We got costume designers. The open call was basically send photos of a garment and share your thoughts on how this costume could develop into a performance, or what you want to explore through these costumes. And we took 4 costume designs for each workshop. We offered 2 weeks and a stage light design and 2 performers. So from that we have, it came around 20 performances that was generated from costumes. And documentation of that you can find on our webpage. So in the documentation you can find 5 minutes from each of the performances that were generated, and also interviews with all the designers. Work of Jitka, and here, yeah, we also have the work of Snesana is here. Yeah, so I mean, this research could not be undertaken without, it takes place through the designers. And also the performers, many of them are dancers, some were actors, and which we all call them creative collaborators. We also have Fredrik Floen. He is now he's the representative in the Norwegian pavilion of the countries and regions. Yeah. Okay, so we should go on some of the main findings. Costume is highly relevant as a starting point. All participants found methods unpacking the potential of their costumes. Many designers had no previous experience of leading a rehearsal. All participants developed a distinct and original performance of approximately 25 minutes. All participants expressed that they believed it could be developed into a future full-length performance, which many already have done now. Tools and methods were found in the process, and the creative collaboration with performers was crucial for the level of advancement that was reached. The costume showed a wide span in diversity, the performances likewise. The performance challenged traditional categories of form and genres. Yeah.
Are we about to end?
Yeah. We can just. Here is just some of the quotes from the artists about yeah, we had three key research questions. First was, how do you describe the result? No, first, could you describe, how do these costumes perform? And so these are some of the answers. Yeah. And the second question was, how would you describe the process of unpacking the potential? Yeah. And thirdly, how would you describe the result? Yeah.
And maybe to slowly finish.
I think we could just. I think we just have to.
Yeah, I think we did it for 4 years, and I think we just started the project, so it feels like we have to do much more projects, because this was only mapping of something. But I think we realized that there's some really crucial things in the costume, because it's something connected to the body, connected to the person, but also it's a social thing. It's like a bridge between the person and the social, but also it's a materiality, so it's its own thing, a non-human entity, and there's this non-human entity that we're living with, and so I think we've discovered that we need to do another 4-year project. I think that's...
Yeah, and this we just got from the printer, this book that our graphic designer, Philip Blatschek, who is also here, has made the graphic design for. And this will also to be found in the bookshop. We will have a small book lounge here afterwards in the restaurant. Yeah.
And now we give the mic to Charlotte. She will talk for a few more minutes. She was with us a lot of the time through this journey, so she will talk about some of her experiences during it and her own project.
Okay, thank you so much. So I had the pleasure of participating in workshop 5 called In Relation, and then the final workshop, and I think it would be wonderful if you play the video, called workshop 8, where that was actually the ending of the project, where Sotja and Christina invited Sally, who's not here, and Liv Christine Holmberg, who's probably here somewhere, and myself, to participate. And I'm just gonna, there should be a video. Yeah, it comes. Yeah, here it goes. It will just, there's no sound, so it will just accompany me while I speak. It is from some of the experiments we did together. As Christina writes in this book, the Costume Agency book, she and Sotja had the ambition with this workshop 8 to let go of control, pre-planned ideas, theories, and methods, which I find is really beautiful to dare to stop with. And then Christina continues to write that we had an urge to experiment in the rehearsal space and discuss, and let that guide us in our artistic creation. And that meant that with us invited, we were invited to bring white garments. So present in the space, we had 12 white garments. We had 3 projectors. We have images of icons of nature and historical graphical illustrations of women. We had books, mostly poetry. Then we were in a really wonderful rehearsal space at the National Theatre here in Prague. And there was piles of chairs also. That was kind of significant as well. And then we were us 5 women that are kind of from the same generation. So over these 2 weeks, we explored the materialities together, we improvised, and we performed the improvisations ourselves. And one of improvisation would often start that one of us would have some kind of an idea that would lead us in some kind of direction. But of course, then someone else had an additional idea, or we'd start to discuss while we're doing this, and then we might end up somewhere completely different. But it was kind of a really wonderful process of this exploring potentials within the materialities and also rather than searching for a specific outcome or so as you can see kind of in these video, we went in multiple directions. So we composed the space by arranging the chairs and the garment in different ways. We projected images on the spread out garments on the walls and on our clothed bodies. We recorded kind of women dressed in white, moving slowly. And then we reprojected these moving images of white-dressed women moving slowly on other white-dressed women moving slowly. And then we explored kind of dressing rituals, and we did all kinds of different things. So in a way, you could say that this was a really fluid process where someone or something would initiate an exploration. And we kind of really also organically shifted between being performing and witnessing, composing and recomposing the space and each other, and discuss. So in a way, we didn't really have defined, or we didn't have specific roles, as you can say that we often do when we do theater, or maybe in some of the other workshops where there were the designer, the light designer, and the performer. Here we were kind of everything in a really wonderful mixed way, which felt, I think for all of us, quite liberating. So it created an openness and a trust that also actually really invited our vulnerability to be very present in the space between us, but also our laughter. We laughed so much, which was actually also really nice. So one thing I found that was really interesting also with this kind of project was that we, even being 5 women from the kind of same generation, we still come from different family constellations, with and without kind of kids, and with different relationship to each other. But of course, all of us had, from different angles, deep knowledge of costume. But that kind of melting deal of meeting in between that was quite significant. So kind of it created this openness and curiosity, but also really big honesty between us. So to elaborate on each other's ideas and kind of be very co-creative, so it became ours more than one or the other. So the shared responsibility was really important. And I think this is what maybe all of us long for sometimes, this with time. Having time to take care of what one needs, oneself, but also the people around oneself while we work. So, and that actually allowed us to have time to improvise, to be playful, to laugh, to sing, to cry, to share stories, to rest, to be quiet, to speak, to listen, to discuss, to read, or to attend something completely other, at least what we needed. And for me, these explorations somehow became reflection on female relationships and what it means to be a woman in maybe a Western societal context. At times, it felt like we entered the life of our ancestors, women with lives we stand on the lives and shoulders. We stand on the shoulders of, and their labor. So it felt like a world of women icons and rituals that emerged that simultaneously belonged in the past as well as in the present. So I think as being really it's very nice to be able to have that opportunity to do this, where these 5 women of relating, creating, forming, performing, composing, recomposing, constructing, and deconstructing. And I think all the 5 of us feels that we're just, as you're saying with the project, we're just entering a journey that are far from finished. There's so much potential. So thank you for this. And as a little side thing, I'm just going to make a little invitation. I'm doing a costume kind of walk 5 times over the next days on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, which is hopefully going to be very playful. When we finish this talk, when there is the book launch, you can sign up out here. I'll be standing out here with this little sign. So I hope some of you will be willing to join me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We rushed through, so we have time to talk to you, so you can ask us questions, so we can spend time with you. So this is the time for questions. And I think we have some mics here, yeah. Maybe while you're thinking, I can add a little bit to, oh, there you go.
Where? Okay. Sorry, did you? Sorry.
Well, until someone asks a question, I'd like to just say, since we hosted one of the workshops in Helsinki, how can I say, you mentioned already the fact that costume designers are not usually used to organizing rehearsals, for example. And I think one of the most important things that my students, my master's students, most of whom are young designers already, participated. And one of the most important things they said is that through this project, they felt able to really take things in their hands. And they were able to plan their work more, to give themselves a goal, which is not just a theory research goal, but also on practical levels. What is the goal for the next day? What is the goal for what I want to create? So not only on a managerial level, but also on a creative level. So I just say this as feedback to you for your project. And we have 2 of them actually did costume-generated performances as their final project in their MA thesis, let's say, yeah? So I hope there is some kind of dissemination directly to the DNA of the future costume designers. And I just add this to your talk today. Thank you. Thank you for being, inviting us as partners.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Ernstein. I am a costume designer and technician. I was wondering about the concept of shared responsibility in costume design. And I was wondering about your thoughts, having had the experiences you've been working at, about bringing that concept into the professional environment, because I know from my formal education that there's a lot of difficulty in costumers being taught to work against each other rather than in tandem.
Yeah, it's a kind of difficult question because I think it works in different environments and different countries. It works differently. I also know of cases in Czech Republic where costume designer and stage designer do not meet until the opening. So I think there's a lot to talk about in that. But for us, this project, as Sophia was saying, also I think is partially to emancipate the costume designer and to just to reinforce their power. And I must say that I think because it was a female profession, because it's connected to this clothes does not make a man idea and so on, it's been really neglected for a long time. And I must say, I mean, since I'm here, I must say that when I was doing Quadrennial, whenever I had a problem, I would call costume designers, and they would always help me. Thank you, Anna Prekova. Thank you, Sinomona Rybakova. And I knew how well organized they are. They don't need to learn how to make rehearsal. You know, costume designers are the most organized people in the world. So they just needed a bit of space and time.
Hi, I'm Rodrigo from Mexico. I'm wondering, because sometimes in processes for costume designers, rehearsal fittings are seen as kind of an outside process for rehearsal and kind of an interruption to rehearsal. I'm wondering how in your workshops fittings happened. Was it a continuous process that kept happening over time? Or if it was like a schedule stuff. And I'm also wondering how the costumes informed hair and makeup in those workshops.
Yes, thank you for that question. No, actually we did the casting after we got the costume. First we had the costumes, then we did the casting. So,
but also, I think in the first workshop for Ibsen workshop, it was quite beautiful because we did do the costume fitting. And because I'm not a costume designer, I don't experience so many costume fittings. It was so beautiful to see the actors try on the thing and how their body changes and how they kind of are trying on the whole persona when they're doing it. And at one point we were thinking of doing a whole installation with a lot of clothes where actors are putting on the clothes, how they inhabit it and how they take off the clothes as a process of thinking, in a way.
But I could say something more about the first meeting point between the performer and the costume. Because we started very quickly to use the term "listen to the costume." And this term is to take in all different levels. What does the costume say? What does it want to do? And it's about understanding how it communicates, like semiotically, what kind of signs does it give, but also the physical sensations it gives to the wearer. How does it want to move? Does it want to move quick, slow? Is it heavy? Is it light, soft? So the performer responded with movement according to what the costume would trigger of sensations, both for the performer, but also we outside responding. So the first moments, meeting point between the performer and the costume was very kind of sacred. It was very important for us to have a good setting for that. Really a crucial, and we often experience that the first hour or something was really of exploring was really crucial for the rest of the process. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the talk. I was wondering, I thought it was super interesting to think out of the paths from theater, like how do you work as a costume designer, and to put that in the middle. And I was wondering if you have some kind of, if you imagine like in a, let's say in a theater production, like what would you wish that is from the things you research that you imply in it? Like, for example, it was already mentioned that the costume fitting is taking place outside, but I'm thinking because there is so many artistic perspectives in a theater production, like, for instance, like light designers also have sometimes, or technicians, little time to adjust light, and I can imagine they will like to have more times and do it differently. So I'm thinking like how to coordinate everything together to maybe make more rich the artistic process of departments that usually are a little bit more behind or like, yeah, outside the rehearsal process.
I think one of the most crucial things that I discover is how important the costume designer is for the performer's relationship to the garment. Because of this research, it was about the costume, but many performers have a deep and rich relationship to the garment. But many does not have such a reflected, rich relationships. And I think for costume designers, the way they hand over the garment to the performer, it's a lot of information in that moment. And I think for how to, yeah. So that's one of the things I really think is important, how the performer can explore the costume, how they can relate to it, costume designer has a lot of knowledge of how they want it to perform at the stage, and to how this can be communicated and shared and explored.
I'm just thinking, maybe you can also think from this project as it was an expanded fitting room, in the sense that it was not the classical fitting, but that it was time to explore the costume with performers, what it actually did, how it felt. So we brought finished costumes, but the time to elaborate on what it could do potentially was really rich. I think not only for me as a participating in one, but I think also what I explored with my fellow colleagues, what they explored, and also with the performers, that richness in the conversation that often is not very much time in classical. Now I'm doing classical production, whatever that means. Yeah.
Hello. Is that on? Yeah.
Yeah. Is it on?
Yeah, I'll just talk loud. I'm a loud talker. My name is Kristen Essen. I'm interested, first I'm fascinated by the idea of the emancipation of the costumer. And when someone is emancipated, right, they behave in a certain way, and then the people around them also have to adjust to that new role. So I'm wondering, how did the performers respond to the costumer as researcher? And how did the hierarchy change the environment in terms of what the actors learned? Or actors, and dancers. There were lots of, movement.
Well, in the workshops, we mainly had dancers and people working in performance and not classical theater. So we had people who are used to developing work with the makers. So I don't remember any problem. What I think is interesting maybe for the actors to understand that sometimes the costume helps them, but sometimes it works against their bodies or what they're doing, but that it still works. And I think that there's that duality that performers need to understand, that it's a continuation of thinking that is not always just smooth, that there can be a drama between them and the costume. But
yeah, and also I think that from the performers explore the costume from within, and the costume designers from outside, and sometimes also the costume designers to try them on themselves. So it was exploring the garment from outside and inside, and they had a mutual interest and interest and curiosity on it. So yeah? Follow up.
Very quick follow-up. How about sort of relationships with the person designing the light and a kind of change in hierarchies?
Yeah,
well, the lighting designers were invited to work for the costume designers, so we created a little bit different hierarchies. So again, there was no problem. But I do understand when you imagine how would you do this in in a theater institution system. I agree with you that I have no idea. I just did a performance piece in Slovenia in a city theater, and we broke our backs completely because the institution doesn't allow it, of course, I mean, as a system. So I think it's a tricky question.
I was wondering what sort of impact you hope your research project now has on the theater community and us as an audience. I was wondering what you would hope we would learn from it, or what you'd hope if you hope it has some kind of changing ripple effect on the way we go about costume design.
It's another trick question. I'm really not into impact. It's not how I think. For me, it was important egotistically to be in this way of thinking and to understand this way of thinking and to be in this type of thinking with others. And whether it has some kind of impact, I really don't know. But in the arts, I think too often we think in impact and product ways, and I'm trying to avoid it, to be honest. But I think we invited many, many people into the dialogue, and they were part of the dialogue, and they can take the dialogue further or not, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think that it has inspired. I know that from many of the participants, the designers, it has been a crucial experience of what costume does, how it performs, and so I hope you all will have the chance to do a costume-generated performance once, if you like to do it. Not everyone wants to do it. Someone wants to do it. So I hope that those will have the chance to do it, because it's to me now, I think that doing a costume-generated performance, if under the premises that the costumes are being listened to, then I think it's actually an ultimate test of what costume can do. Yeah. So to me, it has opened a lot of. I think it has opened a new ways for me to look at costumes.
Hi, thank you so much for all of this. I realize now that question right then kind of touched upon what I was going to ask about, which is just, and you in most part answered right now about your relationship with the process, but also your relationship with the audience. And conversations you might have had about your relationship with yourselves as the audience, as well as others of the audience in the course of the development of these workshops.
I'm not sure I understand the question, to be honest.
Well, I was just wondering, what point in these workshops, or did the topic and the conversation of your relationship as audience to the process, as well as others, the relationship of others as audience to it. What is the role of the audience?
I can give it a go. I think one of the really beautiful things with these workshops were that as part of the workshop, we presented our in-process works for each other, so we were audiences to each other's workshops, and we commented, we discussed. We discussed what we saw, what we experienced. Then we'd have another, go back to the rehearsal room. Then at the end of the 2 weeks, we will have another showing where all our colleagues were there. And it always was followed by a discussion. So I think we were both working at our own, but we are also being audience to each other's work. And that was really beautiful and very crucial, actually, part of that process for us as participants, because we were in multiple roles, actually.
Yeah, and to be honest, the project was not about reaching other audiences, but creating a safe space for costume designers to be with each other, which we do not have often. You know, often costume designers work for audience, but don't have time for, like Charlotte was showing the last workshop, also to have a safe space where you're with people that do the same job, that are, having same problems, but you can share and talk with them. So it was more about this creating like a platform for us to meet and recharge, And I think the older you get, you forget that you need recharging, and that you do need inspiration, and that you do need support, and that you do need to speak to people who are similar to you, to keep going. So it was a bit maybe introverted, but I think there was at least 100 people involved, so you can forgive us.
Hi, I was wondering kind of what your journey looked like to get to where you are through like education or meeting people and jobs and things like that.
Like personally?
Yeah, like kind of how you got into the industry and kind of what it looked like for you to get there.
Shall I go first? Real quick, I was born in Yugoslavia, which is a country that doesn't exist anymore, and I'm a child of two playwrights, dramaturgs. So when I was 18, I had to run away, and I came here, and I was studying theater, but I didn't speak the language. You cannot be a drama without speaking the language properly. So I started working with space and materiality, and I started trying to find other languages in the theater. So that was my kind of way.
Yes, I studied have a BA in costume design from Oslo National Academy of the Arts, and then I went to Berlin, Universität Künste, and then back to Oslo, and then teaching there. But working as a costume designer for both institutional but also independent productions. Also doing dance, theater, opera, and more experimental performing arts. So it's, yeah. Charlotte?
Well, I don't know. I think there is something with the journey of actually, for me, understanding what costume was potentially to start with, which was quite different from what I experience it is right now. Because some of the experiences I had, I think I had some conversation yesterday with someone about, for instance, just a fitting room, what that was so different from what I experienced that it is now. There's so much more openness and discussion. And I think for me, there is something in the transition of the field that I feel that I belong to that is opening up. And it doesn't give a very clear answer on myself, but I'm really, really appreciative of how the costume field is, including this really important project, is opening up new potentials for all of us. Of thinking and working with costume.
Yeah, people in the back have been waving for a while, so please.
Yes, good afternoon. So one of the things that came to me was, and maybe this is just part of my experience, of working with masks. And I know in some cases the costume designer is different from the mask maker, and there can be this segregation. I've been lucky enough to be able to be a costume designer who also works with masks and creates masks. And a lot of what you were talking about, I think, is related to that process of, so when looking into mask making in Bali, the way the Topeng mask performer looks at his mask first to figure out what it's trying to say before he then interprets it. In the African sense of masking, where the whole body is a mask, not just the face. And to me, that was very much related to the idea of costume design. So do you have any references or any connection to mask? I think there was a mention of puppetry as well. And do you think that informed what you were doing?
Absolutely, and I think we're talking far too little about mask in the costume discourse. Actually, I've written a text as a reflection text, and talking about. I introduced concepts of masking, animation, and iconizing to understand the process of how costume generated, how a performance can emerge from costume. So yeah, and I'm just curious to look more into that because it's such a rich field, and masks have been researched for decades, and there's so much to find there. Absolutely. Was that? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I am Jimena from Mexico. I thought in a couple of things. It's a beautiful investigation and research that you made it. And I think you discovered the empowerment of the costume designer. And I think in the difference between that a stage director, preconceived in his head and wants to saw, and that you hear the process and discover through the process things that you don't preconceive. And I have two questions in particular. How long before the actress who play Hedda in the workshop 1 had the costume? How long before he played with his other actors? And was there a difference between having a story involved, like Ibsen's, in the workshop 1 and like in the workshop 8, that it was pure movement and other things happen?
Yeah, the performers got the garments at the first day. So I explored them together with the costume designer. So it was, and that was like the really important first meeting. In the second, or in the last one, we created it during the workshop. Yes, I think it's a different way of approaching it, and different ways to. But in all these different ways, we need to listen to the costumes. What does it say? Also, as it was kind of built on our bodies in the workshop number 8, we built it as we created, but we also we listened. We had to listen to it. And we can also say about workshop 8 that we hardly talked. As we worked, we didn't talk about it, but we talked afterwards. So it's really an intuitive approach, using all our senses and being very intuitive to it.
Yeah, and for me, I think an important thing that I would want to take to the future is that working with costume designers, like working with puppeteers, I understood this thinking through materiality and thinking through doing and thinking through performing, that it's a form of thinking. So I started being curious about what this performative knowledge is and what it is, these knowledges that maybe cannot be verbalized and maybe not even grasped. But it was really mesmerizing to watch the performers think through doing this and watch the costume designers think through doing it. And in the last workshop, 5 of us, we literally had dialogue through performing without having a clue what we're doing. We were just having a conversation through doing this. So there's something in these other ways of thinking that are kind of also neglected. But we have 1 more minute, so maybe one quick question, and then we will let you go to breathe the air.
Hello. Can I ask, why do you think you dressed up as historical women when you dressed up in some of those costumes? Any reason, any theory?
Why?
Yeah, why do you think that happened when you were improvising, that you became historical women? Speaking as someone who teaches historical costume, I'm just interested to know why.
Oh, in the last workshop? We have no idea, but it was one of the rare places where we were together, women in their 50s, you know. I'm usually with my students, I love my students, but it was just amazing to be with these women whose bodies have similar experience like mine, and I didn't have to explain much. So somehow the ghosts came to us. I have no idea. And I think we finished there. Thank you very much. Go to Charlotte's walk.